Good evening, President. What lessons you take from the crisis of the latest months?
I would say that I had to deal with three fronts, three crises at the same time, at least three, and they all had to do very much with what I believe is a big challenge for our world today is democratic governance. First of all, the global crisis, the global economic crisis, the financial crisis, where we have a globalizing economy, a globalizing market with many benefits, but also with many problems, and with a lot of power that goes beyond the power of any one nation. It goes beyond the power of any one government or parliament. It goes beyond our democratic institutions. So we are dealing with strong market pressures that make decisions on your fate in a few seconds when we, in our democracies, have to deliberate.
But do you think this crisis provoked the crisis of democracy too?
With this globalizing world, we have, first of all, a concentration of power outside of the nation states, where you have, whether it's big corporations or financial institutions or hedge funds and you have concentration of money, you have concentration of media, you have concentration of know-how and technology, and there are imbalances created. Imbalances which create inequality, imbalances which create corruption and lack of rule of law, imbalances which undermine the sense of justice. And in the end, this strong concentration of power can influence day-to-day decisions. They can influence a deputy, they can influence a government, they can buy off, very often, governments or justice or police authorities or whatever. And we have seen lobbies, for example, in the US, 2008, the crash was very much because of the financial system having fully liberalized, too much so, where there was no real oversight and control. So I think this is the one area of the crisis which we need. We need more democratic governance at the global level. The second crisis, or the second front, if you like, is a European one. And we are in the middle of constructing our Europe. We are not at the beginning, we are not at the end. And the euro, of course, is something in between. We haven't completed this. And at the same time, Europe has the capacity, I do believe Europe has the capacity to deal with these globalizing forces. That's why I think Europe today is very important. It was a peace project after the Second World War. I think it's a project to humanize globalization today. Unluckily, I believe this conservative, somewhat conservative dominated Europe right now took a wrong approach to the problem. It said Greece, the problem is Greece. Or maybe the problems are the Greeks. And we got into a nationalistic discussion. Who are the bad guys? The Germans, the Greeks, the Italians, the South, the North. That is destructive for the basic principles of Europe. We need to go beyond the nationalisms and look at each other, at what the problems are, and look at the real facts, and say, let's pool our resources, let's create maybe a Eurobond, let's maybe have a financial transaction tax, as many of us have proposed. Let's have more transparency in the financial system. Let's have more oversight of the rating agencies. Let's have a growth strategy. We can do this, and therefore we would be able to deal with the debt crisis, not only of Greece, but of other countries much more effectively. The third crisis, of course, was a Greek crisis. It is a Greek crisis also. And that, again, is a question of governance at the global level, the European level, but then also a question of governance at the national level. Unluckily, we had lack of transparency in much of the way our government was worked. A state that still has the remnants of coming out of a dictatorship even decades ago, but we didn't go through a real perestroika or a real glasnost, if you like, to really change the working of the state. And it became quite clientelistic, much waste of money, lack of transparency, even corruption. We have high tax evasion, and I think this is exactly the crisis I had to deal with. The debt was the result of the deeper problems of our of lack of democratic governance, I believe.
Now I would like to talk about the episode of the referendum. You remember the 31st of last October, after signing an agreement with 17 countries, I think, European country, your opinion changed. And you proposed a referendum to ask for Greeks to approve this agreement. Sarkozy and Merkel told you, why did you do that? And they demanded you change the question, if I remember. Yes or no to stay in the Eurozone, rather than yes or no at the agreement. Finally, you canceled the referendum. Could you explain precisely this sequence? Because for us, it's very important, and I think we need to know what really happened, what's really happened during those days, from the beginning. I remember I think it was 27 till the 6th.
That's right, November, yes. Well, I'd be glad to talk to you about the referendum. To get the get the facts straight, if you like. First of all, the question of the referendum. The question of the referendum was clear from the very beginning. It was, we have this package, which we have decided. I did not change my opinion. I am in favor. I was in favor, and I am in favor of what we decided on the 26th and 27th of October. Very important for Greece. It was cutting the debt, the private debt, by 50%, in the end even more, 53%. It is also a package to help Greece have time so they can get onto the markets and have time to make the reforms to become a competitive country. We have very important strengths which we can develop, which we haven't developed as much as we should, from tourism to agriculture to shipping to green energy. Even now we are finding we have natural gas. So these are things we need to develop, but we need time. I need time to reorganize our state.
When I say you change your opinion, doesn't mean you change because you change your mind, but because when you discussed with Sarkozy and Merkel, at that time, did you decide to propose the referendum?
I had talked to Mrs. Merkel. The Élysée was informed, but they were not informed at the final moment. But I had told them that this is a possibility. And as a matter of fact, I was instructed, if I go to a referendum, I was advised that I would do this after we make a decision on the package, which I did.
You put them in the confidence? You know, when you took together the 27th, for example?
I did not give them at the last moment. It's true. I did not say at the last moment that now I will announce this. Maybe it should have been done. But this was my decision, a sovereign decision, if you like, in any case. But I did discuss this afterwards in Cannes. I believe that the fear of a referendum from some of the leaders was wrong. First of all, it's a democratic right. Secondly, I believe that the Greek people, this is my belief, would have been positive. But even if they were not positive, this would have been a clear decision to stay in the euro, to accept the package, and that would mean we also stay in the euro, or not to accept the package, which would mean that we would be outside, basically outside of the euro. So the question was not leave the euro or stay in or stay out. The question was, if you accept the package, this will guarantee that we stay in the euro. If we do not accept the package, this would basically mean we leave the euro. So that would be the basic question. And that is what I explained, of course, in Cannes. I also said, of course, that because we have a huge pressure from the markets, huge pressure from the globalizing media, which, you know, one analyst here or another analyst, everybody became an analyst, an expert on Greece. And everybody was saying, one person would say we will make it, another person would say we will default. So this was very difficult for us in Greece. We had to have a clear message. So what I was saying is, we need a wider consensus, a wider strength, and how best to do so, from my point of view, was to ask the Greek people to own this program. It is, in the end, they, not only me, not as a prime minister, not a government, but we all, as citizens of the country, have to take on the responsibility, and that's part of our democracy. From ancient times, we all have, as citizens, responsibility to make our decisions happen. And how best to do this? By making the decisions themselves. Now, I also said that if there is a wider coalition, this could be an alternative.
Yes.
And in the end, that's what happened. So the referendum, if you like, catalyzed the coalition government. I would have liked to have seen a referendum, but there was, as you said, much reaction outside and inside Greece, fearful of democracy,
yes.
which I disagree with, of course.
Somebody told us a little that when you came back from Germany after the agreement, you realized that you're in Europe, but you lose in a way you lose Greece. And you realize in that moment during the national feast, the 28th of October, when everybody in the street, protest against this decision. Is it true? Is it a very important moment for you?
That was very important, yes, you're absolutely right. It was very important because we came back with one of the most difficult but also historic and I think positive decisions for Greece and for the Greek people. However, here in all the opposition, many also groups, some extreme, some not, created a very difficult situation politically, saying that this was unpatriotic, that this was traitor to the country, and so on. So I said, if that's so, let us have a real debate. Let us have a real discussion, because let's not have it simply in the parliament, and let's not have it simply in some windows in the television debates. Let us have a real debate and let the Greek people decide. And everybody then has to be responsible. People have to take a position. Every single citizen and every single party have to take a position. A yes or a no. You cannot play the game. And you cannot play politics, play politicking. You have to be very responsible whether we want this to go through or not. When I said that, the change was rapid, immediate. The parties that were criticizing me came out and said, you cannot endanger this agreement in Europe. And I said, well, you were just telling me that this was unpatriotic, and now you're saying that we are endangering this agreement. So, in fact,
that time we were embarrassed with Europe and with the parties.
That's right. That's right. No, but this is the question. I think I had convinced the leaders in Europe that this referendum was necessary. Mm-hmm. I believe, however, that here in Greece there were many interests that, for their own reasons, did not want the people to be participating, because they have their own, if you like, clientelistic relationships, their own powers would be undermined by saying, we're going to the people. And they would have to come out, be very clear, yes or no. And they cannot play this game that we don't like it, there are different alternatives, we want something else, and so on. This is it. Either we take it or we don't. And but as I said again, this was also a revelation, a positive revelation, because then we had a coalition, we had parties that said, okay.
But President, you were conscious when you took that decision to propose the referendum that it was unacceptable by your partners in Europe?
That's not true.
No?
No. They never told me that I should not go to a referendum. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, when I talked to Chancellor Merkel, she said she herself has been thinking about this possibility at some point in Germany. I talked to the others, they knew that, they all told me that obviously a referendum has its risks, but they didn't say no. They said that's something you have to decide on your own and have to measure the balance and so on. But the media hype that came out of this was, of course, something that seemed to be very negative. And I think that there was an overreaction from the French government, which maybe because of a tradition that exists in France of negative referenda on European issues, there was maybe this overreaction. Every Greek understood that this has to do with his or her future, direct future, your pocket, your banks, your economy, being in the euro or not being in the euro, and the difficulties you have to take. So this was not a theoretical thing of whether we want in a constitution a foreign minister of the European Union, or whether we want votes this way or that way. This was not a bureaucratic decision which has to be taken. This was very, very deeply touching the soul and the daily life of the Greek people. And that's why I also felt It was very important to have a democratic decision.
But you told me Sarkozy and Merkel are not in disagreement with you on this question.
Sarkozy was not in favor. That's true.
Was not in
Was
favor.
not in favor.
And
That's
Merkel?
true. Merkel agreed.
Merkel agreed.
Yes.
But if Sarkozy...
But I believed in the end I had convinced them that this was important.
Yes. But in that case, why did you stop the process of the referendum?
The day after I went to Cannes and I came back, the day after the opposition basically said, let's look for a coalition government. And I said, fine. And we sat down for a number of days and made the coalition government. So I tried to do more coalition, more consensus for quite a few months in Greece.
It's another path for the agreement.
It was another path. These were two possibilities. One would be a referendum, which would be a very clear yes or no. I believe it would be a yes. And to all our creditors and to all our partners in the European Union and to all those around the world who are saying Greeks do not believe in this, Greeks do not want to do this, Greeks are against this, we would have said, yes, we are unhappy, but we have decided to make this decision and do this program and make these changes and go ahead.
Today, are you proud to have convinced your parliament to vote for this plan?
Yes, I'm proud. I'm proud that for 2 years I have taken on maybe the most difficult task that any prime minister has taken on over the past 30, 40 years after the dictatorship in Greece since '74, and I have had to deal with problems that were there for 10, 20, 30 years that many never touched. It could be the pension system, for example. We had a pension system which was not viable. We had to change it for the next generation. The education system, the bureaucracy, the transparency, fighting corruption. When we got into this crisis, that I said, I know it's going to be politically harmful for me, for my ratings and my polls and so on, but this is my responsibility. This is my responsibility to my country. This is what I have been asking for, to take on the responsibility for the common good.
But sometimes there are aggressive reactions against the task force, for example.
That's right.
They're anti-German for attitudes
Yes.
in Greece.
What I say to this is, I say, if the problem was to throw the troika into the sea, we would have done it. If we throw them in the sea, we will not solve the problem. The problem in Greece is there. We have a debt, we have a deficit, and that is the tip of the iceberg, because the debt was created for some reason. We are changing Greece. We are making Greece a strong country, which is competitive, we have great people, we have great capacity, we have a beautiful country with natural resources, with cultural resources, with agriculture, which can become high quality and is becoming high quality agriculture for biological or ecological foods and so on. The tourism, which will also be a green tourism, green energy, as I have said, shipping, aquaculture, services, and health and education can also become an industry, and there is going to be a great deal of investment in Greece. Why do we want the task force? We want to get the best practices of all of Europe, and this is where Europe can be helpful. Europe is a collage of experience, of knowledge, of different, it's an experiment. Each country is one experiment. So where can we find the best? So this is a great opportunity to use the knowledge, the experience of the peoples of Europe in order to make Greece a very different country.
But there are a lot of people in Greece that think that it's a way to be under control of the foreign countries.
We are. I don't disagree. Right now we have this big umbilical cord which is linked to our creditors. That's the reality. The question is, do we cut that, or do we strengthen ourselves? Do we strengthen our own feet, our own capacity, so that when it's cut, we can be on our own? That is what we are doing now. We are making the difficult changes so that we don't need to have this umbilical cord, these creditors giving us this money to us, that we can stand on our own 2 feet. We are now in a globalized world where everyone is interdependent. But if we develop our capacity as a society more, and this is a democratic question, invest in our people, invest in innovation, invest in a more equal society in Europe.
I understand that according to you, this agreement is good for Greece, okay? But could you explain how it is good for Europe?
A success story for Greece will be a success story for Europe, first of all.
That's true.
Secondly, this is one way of showing real solidarity. Although this is loans, this is not free money. I always say that because people are saying we are giving you money. Yes, but we will pay it back. Thirdly, this is also something which I think has brought out the problem of the euro that we need to fix. This could be an opportunity, if you like, for strengthening Europe. It could be an opportunity for the dissolution of Europe, but I believe it's an opportunity for strengthening Europe. Stronger monitoring, if we had stronger monitoring, Greece would never have been in this problem. More transparency in the financial sector, strengthening our banks, but making sure our banks also invest in the real economy. If Greece leaves the euro, if Greece defaults and leaves the euro, even though everybody is saying we now have isolated Greece, the markets will say this is a precedent. This is something which could happen somewhere else. It could happen in Portugal, or I don't want to talk about other countries, but this could be then, whenever a country has a problem, then people will say in the parliaments, in the Euro Parliament, or in other governments, they'll say, we have a precedent, let's kick them out. I believe that would be destabilizing, both for the markets, but it also be destabilizing politically and undermining the collective will of Europe. We need to get beyond our nationalisms. We need to get away from the blame game. There's the good European or the bad European, or the North or the South, or the Germans or the Greeks or the Italians or the French or whatever. We are in this together. We all have our positives and our negatives, if you like. What we want is, working together, is to highlight and strengthen our positives and be able to minimize our negatives. And this needs collective. It needs getting beyond this prejudicial way of looking at the problems, looking deeper at what the real problem is. And the real problems are structural, political, they are institutional, they are the will to work together.
But when we did that speech in April 2010, at that time you knew the situation, you knew the situation was catastrophic. 1 year before, in 1909, just after you became Prime Minister, you told the truth. It was very courageous. It was the first time in Greece. You declare our deficit is not 4%, as the latest government said, but 13%. Why did you decide to tell the truth at that time, 1 year before?
We had, let me put it this way, we had a deficit in our budget, we had a deficit in competitiveness, but we also had a deficit in credibility. People were saying, well, we are not sure what you are telling us. Is it the truth? So I said, the first thing we must create is a credibility. People trust. The markets, our partners, our citizens can trust us. That's very basic for democracy. I think it's basic for anybody who wants to invest. So I said, it's better for me to say the truth, tell the truth, and say, this is our problems, these are our problems. I will take on the responsibility with the country, with the government, to make these changes, but it's much better than to hide this. Sooner or later, it would have been revealed. And then it would have been worse, because then I would have in no way been able to convince anyone that we were credible. And at least I spoke the truth, and on that basis, we had to make some very difficult decisions, which we did. The idea that was developed in Deauville, that all of a sudden the banks would have to lose money if they were going to invest in risky countries, created a rift inside Europe, those who were high risk and those which were low risk, and immediately brought in Portugal and Ireland into this same program, but it created a fear by the markets, which was then multiplied by the media, that Greece will default and Greece will leave the euro. That destroyed the confidence of the Greek people that we can move ahead. Even though we were doing very well to then, the investors were waiting. They said, we will not invest until we know that the situation is clear. The consumer stopped. The banks, people were taking money out of the banks. They would also not lend to the Greek banks to companies. So the real economy stopped. And since then, up till today, we have basically been negotiating this new package. Since that happened in Deauville, and then after in May 2011, since then to today, we have been negotiating this package. So that has been truly a storm, a very difficult storm. I did not expect that this would happen, but I could not.
Really?
No, I did not expect that exactly would happen. Yeah. No, I did not. I did not say that things would be rosy. No one said. But we were
till that point.
If you look at the press till early April 2011, Greece was a model of doing its best. We were doing cutting the deficit had gone very well. The changes were going very well. Then all of a sudden, the market started to push again.
In the public,
and this I think is another question. Is I would add to this one more thing. If Europe here had a collective and democratic response to the markets would be calmer, and that would also give us more time to make the changes, because the question is not just the debt, it is to make the changes so that we do not create a debt.
In a public speech you has declared lately, our political system is collectively responsible for all civil servants hired by favoritism, privileges given by law, trade unions and business we favorized, and thieves we hasn't put in jail. A strong speech. But since that speech, is there any changement? For example, thieves in jail, less civil servants, less privileges given by law?
Yes, these are the difficult decisions we have made. I would have liked to have seen these even more quickly, but during these 2 years, we have for the first time seen from football managers to doctors to TV stations that were involved with corruption or not running their companies well, going to the court and going to jail. We have every procurement and every budgetary issue online, so people can follow. We have cut we've opened up 150 professions, so therefore these privileges have been taken away, because there were very many privileges. People who had guaranteed, if you like, fees and so on, this was opened up. We have cut down by approximately 100,000 the public sector, and by the end of this program will be at least by 200,000. So many things have been done. There's much still to be done, and still there is a lack of sense of justice. Our justice system itself needs to be strengthened. I would say justice system, media, the political system, the public service, we were very much involved in a clientelistic relationship with each other. That is breaking up. That is changing. It is taking time, but it's changing. And that is going to be a new Greece, and I believe it will be a much better Greece for the next generation.
You declare we haven't corruption in our genes, no more that German has the Nazis in theirs.
That's right.
It was a way to answer the critics, you know.
Yes, there was, because I have talked about corruption, there were some people that said that, well, you were saying that Greeks are corrupt. I say, no, it's not at all. And because there was also a lot of criticism in the media, international, I would say even racist, very racist. You know, these Greeks, they're lazy, corrupt, they don't work, and so on. The ouzo, they dance, the zorba. Well, of course, if you come to Greece in the summer, you want to be entertained, and people are working. I looked at the statistics in the OECD, who works most, and I was very surprised to see that the Greeks are #1.
Really?
Yes,
how
#1. High. I think Maybe the South Koreans have gone
Really?
gone above us. Yes, it doesn't mean that they are. This is on average. It doesn't mean that there are also inequalities. There
Yes.
are some that are working less and some that are working much more. But we are, according to the OECD, these are not my statistics. These are OECD statistics. Secondly,
Does it mean it's a crisis of not of the, the Greeks themselves, but the crisis of the Greek state?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is not, obviously, when a state has problems, and the institutions have problems, this creates a culture also, which we need to change, the political culture, if you like, which will take more time. For myself, I have fought for democracy all my life, and I see myself working very much in developing also, even from my experience, a training center for democracy, for democratic governance, not only for Greece, but also for a wider world where everybody is looking now, what the Arab Spring is going to do, what other countries are doing in transitioning to democracy, but also what democracy means in a worldwide basis. But I would also say that the prejudice that exists, we have to get beyond, and that's part of the problem in Europe. It was very easy to say, to label, Greece is the problem. No, Greece is not the problem. Greece has a problem. Mm-hmm. We are not the sickness itself. We have an ailment, and therefore we have to go through a cure. But Greeks are very proud people, and very capable people, very creative people, and we need to liberate the forces of the Greek society, of our citizens, empower our citizens to be able to use the great capabilities that they do have and that our country has. And we have had a political system which I would say was very much a system which castrated our creativity, if I could put it that way, of our society.
But do you think, do politicians who are in a way, in a part, responsible of the failure, could be those who are going to get out Greece of the chaos? Do you think it's possible?
It's a shock. How we deal with the shock is the question. Do we see it as something we have to hide from and fear and just cry about and try to find some scapegoat and the bad troika or the bad Europeans or the bad Germans or this and that, or the bad capitalist system? That's all right, we can talk about that. Or do we say, this is now an opportunity for us to change, to make Greece a better country? I believe it's a great opportunity for change. And I say that because there is also a lot of discussion about Greece has not done anything. We have not, these last 2 years, we've been slow and so on. Again, OECD, just 2 days ago, they have an indicator of structural reforms of all the OECD countries for the last 2-3 years. It's not a referendum because
at the end.
I will tell you why. I will tell you why it's not a referendum. Because when you vote for a party, you can vote for many things.
Yes.
You can say, maybe there's a little bit of a different dilemma, maybe that party has a different way of looking at it, maybe I want to vote for a voice which will be critical or whatever. But you do not have the dilemma, the real decision, yes or no. So this is what I wanted, this is why I wanted a referendum. But in any case, this is democracy. We have our elections. We will have our elections, I assume, quite soon. And of course, I believe that we need to carry on changes. Not only this program, which part of it is because of our creditors to cut the debt very quickly and the deficit very quickly, which is painful, but make the deeper changes.
PASOK, Socialist Party, is in the same coalition with Democracy and with Laos, with extreme right. Is it easy to govern with the extreme right when you are a member of the PASOK and head of the International Socialists until 2006?
However, what we have is an emergency situation where we say, okay, whoever is ready to support this program and support the country moving ahead is welcome. That is what the basis we put. But I would say that now that we have gone through this initial phase of a government of coalition government, which is not easy in any country. And in Greece we do not have that tradition. If we have a coalition government after the elections, I think it has to be very clear, the rules of how we work together, the goals that we have, the roadmap that we have, and in a way which makes sure that we continue in very deep democratic reform of our country. And that is what I hope the elections will bring out, that a strong, progressive, I would say, force for change in our country.
It means that you think it's possible to have a democratic government with the extreme right?
I think it was necessary now. I think after the elections it would be very difficult. I believe that we need a wider coalition of progressive forces that deeply believe in structural democratic changes and realize that the two big parties also have a big responsibility in what they have done or what they have not done over the past decades.
Did you discuss about that with your French comrades of the Socialist Party, with François Bordes, for example?
I respect absolutely the fact that many of my comrades did not like this coalition, and this would not have been my first choice, for sure. As a matter of fact, when I first was elected in 2009, and I was elected with 10% difference from the second party, yes, and with a very big majority. I think what we did was necessary to make sure that we keep on path, we create a climate of understanding in the Greek society, a wider consensus, and be able to pass very important laws which are changing Greece and will be historical, I believe, for the next generations.
Thank you, President, for your disponibility.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.